Hello and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I'm excited to be here today with Prashant Saradesai. He is Director of AI for WIS. How are you doing today?
Hi, Amanda. I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing well. Can you share a little bit about WIS? What services are provided there?
Yeah, absolutely. So WIS is one of the top 100 firms. We focus on mid-market. We provide accounting, tax, as well as client advisory services within New York, New Jersey, and even nationally as well.
Okay, great. Well, we're here today to talk about accounting firms and finance organizations and how they can select the right AI implementation partner.
Mhm.
I think you spent the last year doing a study of over 200 vendors. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Basically, our approach is as technology is evolving, we see how AI is taking over all aspects of the business. So we started evaluating. So WIS as a firm decided to go in that direction very early. So we took a stance that we are going to be AI native, and we are going to transform our own business internally through AI and the evolving technology that it is, right? So we started evaluating, and then that's how there were a lot of startups coming up in the market, and we started evaluating them. So we have our own internal framework through which we evaluate these different vendors, because, as you know, the venture capital field is like so bustling for last few years from the advent of ChatGPT, right? So basically, we started reviewing a lot of these finance vendors or the AI platforms, which claim to be having solutions which will solve our problems. So we started looking at some of these, and what we learned is only around 60% of the vendors that we looked at mainly have are they are trying to use AI in some way or the other, right? But rest of the market is not really using AI. They are still in the initial stages of adoption, or some of them are just sitting on the beach thinking about it, and they don't know how to go about it. I think that's where somebody like Wiz comes in and helps those organizations. So a lot of our clients are asking us, hey, there is ChatGPT, Claude, there are so many solutions today. How can we implement it, right? That's where we are helping them implement those solutions.
Okay. So, why do you think it is that so many finance teams are not yet exploring AI options? Is it that overwhelm of the number of options? Or, from your experience, why is that?
Yeah, we like I feel, and what we are seeing at WIS is when you look at AI adoption, you can have some of the point solutions. What I mean is like, hey, I want to process invoices. You can use AI to just extract invoices into a readable format, right? But that's not going to drive ROI for these companies. So when we look at the whole workflow, finance workflow, for example, then if we can bring in AI, that's when it's going to make a larger impact, right? So for the same invoice example, if we can have a workflow which can not just extract invoices, it can do three-way match, it can code the GLs, and then help us to go through the approval process these organizations have. Then you post an entry, then you perform reconciliation. So if AI can execute an end-to-end workflow, that's where it's meaningful, and that's where organizations can show the return on investments that they are making, right? So a lot of them are not able to, and some of the challenges that they have today is they don't have their processes well defined, right? We come across that. There are two major aspects I want to mention. One is their process, because they haven't defined their process really well. There are a lot of bottlenecks. There are a lot of manual processes, right? So they need to fix those aspects first before they say like, hey, I want to transform my entire workflow. And the second thing we see is the data foundations, which is very critical for AI, right? So if you AI is as good as what data you provide to it, right? So these LLM models are very good these days, but again, they are trained on the internet data, right? So if you want to have more specific solution for your organization, then you need to have a good data that you feed into LLMs, right? So we see there are a lot of gaps in the data foundations that these organizations have. So these are two main concerns, and then the third one I just want to mention, which I have lived through my experience, is also the change management process. So if you look at it, if leadership has the vision of bringing AI to the organization, but if you are not bringing everybody in the organization have value, there won't be enough value that you can define without doing that. Because if everyone in the organization understand what value AI brings, then I think you will be successful as you roll these out. Because like that's where a lot of these AI initiatives fail with the change management aspect for the organizations.
Yeah, imagine communication and training are critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think defining that vision, training your employees on advantages of AI, and more than advantages, I think what are the limitations of AI? I think if you can talk through the limitations, that's when everybody will know, okay, these AI models can hallucinate, right? So when they hallucinate, how do you reduce that hallucination, right? So and then the other aspect of it is, especially in finance, you cannot rely on an LLM model that it is generating results, right? Because what happens is in marketing and some other field, maybe if you're developing a campaign, it's okay. You have text and reviews, but in finance, good enough is not an answer, right? So you can't say like, hey, my finances are good enough. No, even one number doesn't work. It flows through your financial reporting. And there are other challenges to it, right? From a financial reporting standpoint, from an audit standpoint. So from that angle, it is very, very important for your employees to know the limitations, have the human in the loop process for your finance workflows. That is critical for the success.
Yeah, especially in the finance sector, how important or critical is it to have no errors? Obviously, I'm sure many leaders are worried about AI and LLM errors.
It's massive. It's massive, right? Because as I mentioned, AI errors in finance are not cosmetic, right? You have you have a lot of repercussions if you get any numbers wrong. Uh, these general AI LLMs give you plausible, right? Like if you look at these LLM models, they are non-deterministic, right? So they are going to give you probabilistic answers to the questions that you put in. So you need to be careful, right? Otherwise repercussions are dangerous. And that ties back to why CFOs, finance advisors, are little hesitant on implementing AI at a scale that we think it's going to work. And the good news is this field is evolving so fast. What we spoke last month, like we can be conflicting them if we speak today, because they are solving. These AI models are evolving exponentially. Whatever challenges we are seeing last month, they're getting solved, right? So if you look at the pace, the positive aspect of it is for a CFO, you need to constantly look at it, and what they need to do is be on the train, right? Like just don't sit and watch. They need to get on the train, build the processes, test it out, figure out the depth and the limitations, and then move ahead, right? If you don't do this, you will be left behind. There'll be somebody who's going to work through this, and they're going to disrupt the market for you.
I imagine one thing they're really focused on is that return on investment.
Yeah.
So, how do they track that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I think in the market we see that ROI has been a big question mark, because these technologies are evolving. There is huge investments made by organizations, but they are not able to show the ROI for that, right? So I just want to give this background because, like last year, right, we spoke so much about agents, right? And then those agents were doing one step, two step, three step at a time, right? So I think like recently, last 2, 3 months, with some of these more powerful reasoning models, which are able to solve for a lot of it. They're not just solving 1, 2, 3 steps. There is agentic orchestration, multi-agent orchestrations that are happening, and they are able to reason very, very well and execute end-to-end workflow. So I think that's a big shift that has happened with the technology. Right now, when you think of ROI, you are able to look at it from that lens. And how do organizations stack? I mean, you need to define a very robust metrics for all of this, right? So now, if if you are starting and automating an end-to-end workflow, you need to set your metrics and be able to track them, right? So what's happening is, if you don't define metrics before you start investing, then you're just like flowing. You don't have a way to look at it from and evaluate it for return on investment, right? So what is the biggest thing is to come up with metrics, track them regularly, right? So you know how you're progressing, figure out where there are gaps, and then reevaluate, and if you need to invest in something else or not, right? Because sometimes organization get committed to a vendor or a vendor solution, and then they think, hey, ROI is going to come. They were sold on some vision, but if you're not tracking it, you spend that money for 6 months, 8 months, and then you realize like, no, this is not the right solution for me. And you couldn't show anything at the end. And we have seen a lot of cases like that, right? So that's why I think defining that metrics becomes very, very critical.
What, from your experience, what are some of the common mistakes or roadblocks that finance teams make when they're implementing these AI tools?
I think I want to call out three mistakes here. So the first one is, I say a lot of them start with technology, right? So I mean, if you want to solve a problem, hey, I want to use this technology to solve problems, but instead process is where you need to look at, right? So we do advise a lot of our clients where first thing we do is looking at their process, understanding their process. What are their data? How does it look? How accessible the data is, right? So once we were able to map that, then technology conversations can come in, right? So I think that's the first mistakes a lot of them do. And then the second one is treating AI as a point solution, right? Like as I mentioned earlier with an invoice example, like, hey, you want to solve just one? No, you need to look at it holistically and see how you can draw out. And in some cases, we have come across where you define the workflow, you think a technology can solve the problem, but you may not be able to solve the whole workflow at once, right? So sometimes you need to have that plan to solve the whole workflow, but you have to take smaller bites and be able to uh, get there in 2 months, 3 months, right? So if you try to solve all of it, there will be challenges. So I think that's the second mistake a lot of them do. And then the third is the change management, right? I think the change management is very crucial for organization. Starts from the leadership, and then drawing the vision, and then bringing the team along is crucial. And sometimes what happens is there is a vision from the leadership. It doesn't percolate down to the people who are executing day-to-day work, right? And there is that big gap, which a lot of organizations don't close upfront. So that's another challenge or a mistake that I see.
Okay. Well, this, as you mentioned, this technology is rapidly advancing.
Right.
What do you see on the horizon in the future in the finance sector?
It's evolving so much, right? As you mentioned. So on the horizon, I think there are a lot of startups, a lot of solutions being developed in the market, right? So organizations have to look at it, where they invest in those kind of solutions, you buy those solutions, or where they need to invest in by building something internally, right? So especially just quickly, wherever there are data, your proprietary data that you don't want to give out to your vendors or any of the LLMs, and you need to make sure that you protect your IP, right? Because so you need to look at it from that perspective. And the second aspect of what's happening in the market and with these technologies is we were talking about agents doing a workflow, right? Where it is heading with things like OpenClaw and what we see computer use aspects coming into play. So the vision or the things that are the direction it's going is like these computer use, if you give enough context, if you give all the data that it needs, and you give access to these models, they are able to execute everything 24/7, right? I think the horizon is basically you will have systems at some point which will be edge based, or like what I mean is like you can have one server with your data is contained within that server, and you give access to an agent, something like OpenClaw, kind of a solution. Now a lot of the bigger organizations are coming up with similar solutions, right? Like Claude came up with a solution, Dispatch, and then Nvidia has a solution that they announced recently. So all of this, as they mature and as security aspects come into play, as you're able to put your data securely into these servers, and then give access to these agents, they're probably going to do a lot of the things 24/7. I think we are heading in that direction. I think people who are the organizations who are investing in capturing their context, right? Context is beyond data. What are some of the decisions that you make, right? So we run a lot of client that we advise, and a lot of clients within their organization, there are a lot of decisions made, right? So are you capturing those decisions, right? Because LLMs, you can give data, but the decisions are not captured. Like organizations who can capture those decisions, who can capture, hey, why did you take a decision, what were the reasons? And if you capture that kind of an information, which is more of what we call as context, or nowadays it's also referred as context graphs. If you are building that context graph, that's going to give you a lot of leverage when tools like these computer use and OpenClaw things you want to adopt. So if you have that built out, people who are doing that today will be successful, able to get to ROIs much faster than others.
It will be interesting to watch the future unfold for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's exciting for me, having been in this field, the pace and the possibilities are just unbelievable. It amazes me every day when I wake up and see the news, see the things coming up. It's so exciting.
Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience today with, what would that be?
Start investing in AI from a perspective of using it for your end-to-end workflow. And when you look at it from that lens, you start defining your process, you start clearing your bottlenecks. And then once you get there, you make sure your data gets. So I think that question will lead to multiple other things, that actions that you can take to get there. I think if somebody is just like trying and not really investing in AI, is going to be really dangerous in a way. So I think a lot of organizations are doing it in phases or in smaller bites in a way. But I think being AI native, thinking from a standpoint of making all your employees AI fluent, are the north stars that organizations have to set up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our thoughts, and thanks for bringing me and Viz into this conversation.
And thank you to our audience. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below and I'll be sure to respond back. Have a great day.